We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and it is a big welcome to the two legends, and I'm going to get right in the middle of them, John Gibson and Supermac. How are you, lads?
All right. Are you keeping us apart, Steve?
I'm keeping you apart. I'm refereeing the game today. This is a pre-recorded show, as I am working away this week. So we did put a request out for questions, and we've got some really good ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the situation with Tonali first, then I'll come to the questions. Then we're going to look ahead to the two games coming up, Arsenal at home and Borussia Dortmund away in the Champions League. So, Tonali, first of all, Malcolm, he got his ban. I think he got off lightly. What do you think?
Yes, I think, though, that it was light because he was very, very helpful and just totally fessed up. And so I think that that it's almost as if they took pity on him. I think it was the minimum sentence that they could give him, really, under the circumstances. Ivan Toney, he was punished a little bit further because he didn't come up front with everything. But also I do think that he was very, very wise, Tonali, to do so, because it means that, unlike Tony, he's not totally excluded until 6 weeks before the end of the ban, that he can continue training with with the players. The club are organising friendly matches behind closed doors for him to keep playing. So that's good. That really is. There is nothing worse than being isolated as a footballer, and probably as many other things. But as a footballer, it's when you've got to do the slog of that keeps you fit, and it's far better when you're doing it with others around you, that you've got company in it. If you're on your own, it's a grind, and it's difficult, very difficult.
John, it's a punishment he's going to have to serve. Nothing Newcastle United, unfortunately, can do about it. So, we've just got to get on with it. But yeah, what was your take on this situation?
Yeah, I think he got off very lightly from his point of view, very harshly from Newcastle United's point of view. I have sympathy with Sandro, because anybody with an addiction, it's not a simple matter. It's a tough matter. It's a heck of a fight to overcome it, etc., etc. But I've got more sympathy for Newcastle, and people are forgetting about Newcastle here. This is absolutely not of their doing. They were sold this guy for the second highest fee they've ever paid in a 130-year history. And now they've got to take the brunt of the 10-month ban where they can't play their huge import at 55 million. It is very, very tough for the club. Of course, it's tough for Sandro. But of course, if you do the crime, you've got to stand the punishment, and that's the fact of life. Um, he'll get over it because he's only 23. If he had been 29 or 30, you would have said, crikey, take a year out of somebody's career at 30-year-old, and you're putting them on this slippery slope downwards. But at 23, he comes back at 24. He's still got the bulk of his career ahead of him in time-wise. How quickly he'll get up to speed, etc., we'll find out. But in a way, I'm just glad it's all come to a head. We know where we are, and we can get on with football life in the meantime. And he can get on counting the clock down to when he starts playing properly again. But it's been a sorry state of affairs. It's been an absolute sledgehammer for Newcastle and for him, because he obviously thought, that he would either A, done nothing wrong, or B, wasn't going to be found out. But it is a sledgehammer, there's no question. And especially, funny enough, when you've just bought a broke in. If it was somebody that was there for life and it happened, well, you'd say, well, should we have known about it as a club and helped before it got to this stage, etc. But from Newcastle United's point of view, it's happened within half a dozen games of the guy signing. So it's tough. But I'm pleased we can get on with it now, because the sooner Newcastle United, with utmost respect to Sandro, can forget about that, put it in a box over on the side, and get on with the the Champions League and the Premier League, and start building their side up. Look to get somebody in January. Maybe he's on a loan basis to see us out in that midfield till the end of the year. But we've got to get back on track and back on life, and at least we know where we are.
Do you not get the impression, John, that obviously AC Milan knew that this was going to be an upcoming problem for them, and so they sought to deal with it very quickly by actually letting him go in a transfer, and Newcastle, they're the suckers who fell for the sordid plan.
I mean,
the Italians.
I
really am surprised, John. Really surprised that the Italian authorities who were investigating him didn't make contact with the Football Association or with the Premier League and just say, we're investigating this player. We feel we need to warn you.
I can follow that thinking totally, and I think a lot of Newcastle United fans have queried the situation. I've certainly spoken to other top ex-players like Malcolm who are convinced that there is something in that, and that it is all very suspicious, etc., etc. The trouble is, legally, it's a minefield, because any accusation you make has got to be proved. Proving that somebody knows something, can I prove that you, Steve Wraith, or you, Malcolm MacDonald, know exactly A, B, C, D on something else totally different? I couldn't prove that, even though I suspect it's true. And it is very, very difficult. And where you're going into a minefield here, I'm talking about Newcastle United or the football authorities, or sitting out there are Tonali's lawyers, the Italian FA lawyers, the AC Milan lawyers, and if you say...
And the Italian Football League.
Well, yeah, but I meant on the other side of the fence, if you were following this story, this suggestion that people knew. They're sitting outside there, and if you put a comma wrong in your speech, they'll have you sued before your feet can touch the ground. So it is, of course, Newcastle United are looking into the situation. No doubt, AC Milan and Sandro's people are looking into the situation.
Sure, and AC Milan are due here in a few weeks' time. The last game of the Champions League in this particular round. What do you think the atmosphere will be?
Oh, I mean, yes, the atmosphere in the boardroom will be
Yeah.
a lot colder than it will be on the pitch.
Yes.
I think there's absolutely no question, no question about that. But really, we've just got to, and also the danger we've got as a threesome in all of 50,000 fans that go to every home game. We don't know all the facts. Whatever we think we know or we don't know or whatever, we don't know the facts in detail. Newcastle United do, AC Milan do, and the two FAs do. But of course, it's not been aired in public, so we've all got to be very careful. But it leaves an awful taste in the mouth, and it's an awful sadness.
Yeah.
And I just wish the young man hadn't got caught up. It is often the case, guys, isn't it? Footballers have an awful lot of time on their hands. If you train 2 hours, say 10 till 12 in the morning, all the rest of the day is your own. Now, if you're single or if you're not a married man with kids, and you've got too much time with too little to do, and these days, more than in Malcolm's days, far too much money.
Yes.
You can do any. So what do? You end up going on your computer onto a show and sticking bets on. Or it used to be in our days that perhaps it was alcohol or girls that was the problem. Nowadays, the problem can be gambling or it can be drugs. But there's always a problem, and there always will be. And as long as you only work 2 days a week, 2 hours a day, there's far too much time on your hands, and young men fall into temptation. Old men do as well, by the way, but young men do it more often.
You speak for yourself, Mr. Gibson.
So it's a problem for football, and there always is. There's a new set of problems. But even gambling is not a new problem. If you go back to Stan Bowles and Paul Merson, and we've had Joey Barton up here and Michael Chopra, and it's different now though, because you're told now within football what you can do and can't do. You weren't told then. They put bets on 2 flies crawling up a window, which will get to the top first. I mean, it was just you bet. But now you can't bet on games. You can't do this. You can't do that. You know the rules. There was no rules then. You know the rules, and if you step over the line, like Tony or like Sandro or like 100 others have, then you're going to be in danger of being caught and being hammered. You didn't used to get suspended over betting. Stan Bowles would never have played a game of football in his life after the first 2 years of his life.
But you must know that the betting situation over in Italy is much more limited to what it is here. Tonali he was betting on illegal gaming sites.
Yep.
It's just not allowed. It's pretty much government controlled. With you can only bet at the racetracks, for example. So of course, betting is widely illegal over there.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this comment by Guy George? He says Tonali's gambling was not illegal. He didn't bring the game into disrepute. There was no conflict of interest. Fans in the club suffer from bans, not just the player. The game is sponsored by betting companies. Players' careers are short, especially their peak years. It's time to stop the hypocrisy and stop banning players who are addicted to gambling. It's 2023. That's not how we do things. They need help, not bans. Do you lads agree?
Who was saying that?
Contradiction in there.
Just a guy who sent a message on Twitter when we asked him questions.
I'm with you. One of the fans. So.
But Tonali was betting on AC Milan and their results.
He was also betting on an illegal site. So therefore, it is an illegal action once you do that.
An illegal activity, but it is an absolute no-no that a footballer bet on the matches that he's involved in. Absolute no-no.
It is harsh. It is a different world these days, etc., etc. But I don't want to appear to be too hard on Tonali because that isn't my point, and I've got a lot of sympathy for him. But if you are going to make a fortune for playing football and kicking the football around, and I'm talking about a fortune these days that people like I and you, Steve, and you, Malcolm, couldn't even dream of making the amount of money in a week, then you must sacrifice something in your life in return for getting that money. And if it means you don't gamble, I mean, when you start playing, I don't mean once you're addicted. If you start playing, then you've got to accept that rules to get the pot of gold, because the pot of gold is given only if you do the following things. So it is difficult. I do follow the guy, what the guy is saying there. And yes, people do need help more than criticism or whatever when you reach Sandro's position. But what we've also got to do is, and that's what the authorities are trying to do, is put Tonali and Tony and everybody up as an example, not only persecuting them, but saying to young players, don't fall into this trap, because if you do, this is what will happen to you. And they're trying to, because if you don't do that, you're giving everybody carte blanche to bet on everything, to do this, to do that, if you don't give any penalties. And really, part of what they're doing with the players of today is trying to deter the players of tomorrow by looking at it and saying, oh, we're not going to get away with this. We're not going to fall into that trap. That is what it is. A very emotive subject.
It certainly is, John. And the problem has existed for many decades, and in fact, younger people joining us on Football Matters, they probably are not aware, but back in I think it was the late 1950s, early 60s, that there was the Sheffield Wednesday situation, and England internationals got barred for life. They didn't mess around back then. They have been betting on their own club's results, and I think Kay was one. Swan, yes.
The big difference, Malcolm, and we should stress this again because we're walking through a legal minefield. The big difference was those boys bet on their own team to lose.
Yes.
They were throwing the match, and they played in the game, and they were throwing the match to me. And that is a hell of a lot of difference to what's happened to Denali, man.
That's the greatest no-no, isn't it?
Yeah, but he in no way, and we must stress this, in no way was he betting on his sides to lose. These guys were throwing matches.
Okay, let's move on. We've covered that, I think, very well, and always treading on legal minefields with stuff like that. But I think we've coped well on NUFC matters over the last couple of weeks. We wish Tonali all the best and hope he gets the treatment he needs and is back in a black and white shirt in 10 months' time, wanting to prove everybody how good a player he is. So that's where we are with that. Okay, we did ask for questions. We have got quite a few decent ones which we can go through. The Dortmund game last week, there was a lot of banging going on. It was drums at the ground, and it seemed to split a lot of Newcastle fans' opinions. Some people loved it, other people hated it. Ron Turner asks, do you think it would be a good idea to create war drums? It would help enhance a fantastic atmosphere. Now, my answer to this, guys, would be very simple. I don't mind a drum as long as I'm not sitting next to the person banging it.
Absolutely.
Is that your opinion, Malcolm?
Yes. The English club that has for decades had a drummer creating the beat for everything else going on was at QPR. Loftus Road, and the fella just banged all the way through the game, and to be honest, I felt it soon became very boring indeed.
there was a big fat guy, wasn't there, as well, Malcolm, at Portsmouth on the terraces. That had a huge
yes,
hat
there
on,
was.
and he was banging on a drum. Mind you, there wasn't one fat guy banging on a drum at St James's Park. There was. It seemed as if every one of the 3,000 seemed to have a drum.
Yeah.
The noise was that incessant. As a one-off, I found it quite mesmerising. Irritating because we were getting beat, but it was mesmerising. What I'm not looking forward to exactly, but what I'm going to be intrigued about is what noise is created in Dortmund when we're just about to play there. You know, if 3,000 did that at Newcastle and there's 25,000 on one terrace, which was 25,000, the yellow wall, and a couple of the legendary Bayern Munich players of the past were interviewed before they were going to Dortmund, and they said, you know, what do you worry about when you go to Dortmund? Is it the high pressing? Is it the enthusiasm? Is it the fitness? Is it the tactical nous? And the fella said, no, it's the yellow wall that terrifies me. And that's the noise of the thousands upon thousands. I mean, they are the equivalent to us in Germany. The fans make their club. And it's going to be very interesting out there to hear this sort of noise. I mean, we've got a big enough task out there, excuse me, with the way they played here, but we've got to face the yellow wall as well, which is quite intimidating, because I felt Paris Saint-Germain found the St James's Park crowd intimidating, because I had no idea it was going to be like that. And they were swept away by our crowd. And we've got to make certain we aren't swept away by their crowd in Dortmund.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll move on to this next question. And this one's from Alistair McKillop. He says, is the current squad big enough to cope over a League and Champions League campaign?
No.
And where would you strengthen? Are there any players that come to mind?
Yeah, I think what you've got to do is look at the most experienced of late side that's in the Champions League, and that's Manchester City. They've been in it in consecutive years for a decade or more. They can put out two separate first teams. That's the quality that they have. 22 players, and there are more apart from those 24. And so Newcastle, they couldn't put out two sides, nowhere near it. And they certainly wouldn't be on equal standing as Manchester City are. And so Manchester City, they can play one game on a Saturday, one team in their Saturday game, and then Champions League on the Wednesday, they can put 11 different players out. And it doesn't make a great deal of difference when they do that.
I mean, Malcolm's right, that we aren't at all anywhere near strong enough.
No.
And we found that out after the Dortmund home game with the injuries we had and the suspension that was immediately coming up with Tonali, and the worry of suspension with Bruno. We are well short. In certain positions, we're not badly off. But we are hugely exposed in other positions, like the right-sided centre-half, no particular cover. Like it's centre forward with two guys, Callum Wilson and Isak, who have had a lot of injury problems at Newcastle. Isak has as well as Wilson, although Wilson's more fragile over there. But Isak's had a lot of injury problems at Newcastle. And then what happens about centre forward? We are very, very short, and that takes time to build up. The only criticism I would give, and I did mention it on this podcast recently, is that, and I said it at the time, this is not hindsight, I did say it at the time, I wasn't certain last summer we needed to spend something like £70 million on 2 cover fullbacks.
Yeah.
And we did. And I think, may I add straight away, I think Livermenko and Hall are quality players, quality kids, and will give this club undying and very, very good service. But what do we need now? Or could we have spent better in a midfield position, a centre forward position, a right-sided centre half position that was more pressing now? We spent a lot of money this summer on 2 cover fullbacks.
Yeah. Well, and John, if you remember back in the 70s when I was playing, Newcastle, they had we used to play with a tiny squad. It was literally a squad of 13.
Yeah.
And one of the additional players was a goalkeeper. And so it was very tight back then, albeit there was only one sub in those days. But in that 13, we had 3 forwards. Newcastle right now have only got 2.
Yeah. Oh.
And I always thought that we were somewhat short back then with 3. And to have only 2, it's it's almost verging on the suicidal.
Yeah.
And I think that we're finding that problem at its worst this weekend.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, it's
I mean, obviously, this show isn't going out till Thursday, so we'll have already played the game against Wolves. But the squad is weaker, lads, at this moment in time because of the injuries. We've got Jacob Murphy, who has got a shoulder injury. Whether he has surgery on that or not will dictate how long he's out. He could decide
nasty shoulder injuries.
He could decide to play with that and then suffer potentially another dislocation. Isak is allegedly going to be out for potentially up to the international break, which means he's going to miss the next few games. Obviously, we've got long-term injury to Harvey Barnes. We've got Sven Botman, who is getting closer, but he's not training on grass at the moment, so he's at least another couple of weeks away. Elliot Anderson woke up after the Crystal Palace game with a bad back. He's out for 8 weeks. I mean, it's really, really hit us across the middle. That's the problem.
And Tonali, of course.
And now Tonali,
Yes, but also Wilson. Is Wilson capable of doing 90 minutes? Unlikely, but even more unlikely is that he can do 2 90 minutes in a week.
But he's been asked to do more than that. He's been asked to do about 5 or 6 in a fortnight.
Yes.
If once Isak's not available, and then
that's right.
It is tough.
It's a big blow for Anderson, I'm afraid, because of the fact that this is a breakthrough season for him, and it's such a big blow for him.
But I really do feel very strongly that the footballing authorities, they bring in this financial fair play, and they limit you in the transfer market and what have you. Newcastle have been extremely limited, and yet they've qualified for the Champions League, and these authorities have still applied the bar on Newcastle as to what they can do in the transfer market, without using their nous and saying, well, hang on, in the transfer market, you need to get a much bigger playing squad, and so we're sort of lifting the bar for Newcastle because these are special circumstances, but they haven't done it. They don't even think that way. Well, if they're not thinking about the sport itself? What are they doing there? Making rules within it.
Mind you, if they lifted the bar for us, Malcolm, you could imagine what Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, and Arsenal, they would go crackers because they go crackers anyway.
Yes.
And secondly, Malcolm, would they lift the bar for a club that is being taken over by the Saudis with their unlimited wealth? Because there's an anti-feeling about that, of course.
Sure, but from a professional basis, not even considering the nationality of ownership, that Newcastle United are desperately short of players with everybody fit, and this FFP was brought in quite recently. So Manchester City already had 2 first teams in their squad. They already had it when it came in, so it didn't really affect them in any way. It hasn't affected Liverpool that much, but it is certainly not only affecting Newcastle, it's hindering them badly.
Yep, it is. Okay, we're halfway through the show. Time for an ad break.
A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find out more about them from their website mrvickies.co.uk or by calling 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to United Group Travel, UK coach holiday firm based in Morpeth. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. They're now taking bookings for 2024. You can call 01670 632 460, 0791 666 4174 or 07957 141 654, or go to the website unitedgrouptravel.com. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button underneath the video today. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up under the video to like it. It does us a big favour. Click share to share to your other social media and let people know about NUFC matters. We're also a podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to help the show financially, you can take out a £25 one-off membership. You get a scarf, a pen, a cup, and a membership card. How do you get it? Go to nufcmatters.com, look for membership. If you've got a smartphone, then put your smartphone over the QR code and it will take you straight to that section on the website. We also support the food bank on this channel. You can donate to the food bank today by going to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. We do support events on this channel as well. If you've got an event, please send it in and we'll promote it. The Tyne Theatre and Opera House are doing a Keegan, Beardsley and Waddle event, the Class of 84, 25th of January 2024. Book now by calling 0844 249 1000. And the Tyneside Irish Centre, they're doing an event with Frank Clark and John Gibson on Thursday, December the 7th. You can get tickets from nufcmatters.com and they are priced at £15. There's also some tickets available on Groupon. Don't forget, you can catch me 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, with Rye, Dave and Daz on the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show, 7 till 9, and you can catch us on the Red, the Toon and the Cat and on Toon Radio's website. WhatsApp us on the day 0330 043 2002, the perfect way to start your day.
Okay, welcome back to NUFC Matters. It's a pre-recorded show today. Stephen Durham asked Malcolm, if you could play in any Newcastle team other than the one that you played in, which one would it be and why? And how many goals do you think you could have scored in the team that you pick?
Well,
the truth is, Malcolm wants to play in any Mike Ashley side.
Oh dear me. I think quite obviously it would be the Keegan era.
The entertainers.
And the entertainers, yes, absolutely. But they had brilliant goal scorers in that side already. So I would have been just a bit of overload, I think, on that.
But can you imagine, Steve, Supermac and Shearer would be the twin centre forwards, and that could be frightening.
100%.
And if you put Malcolm's pace next to what Shearer could do as the Bulldog centre forward,
Yes.
it would be a lovely comparison.
Yeah.
And
A lot of
it
people,
would work.
James.
I think it works. That
Yeah. A lot of people have said to me, "Oh, you could never have played with Shearer," and I say, "No, he's one player I could have played with. That's
Absolutely.
for sure." Yeah.
You played with John Tudor, who in other clubs was being out and out centre forward, at Sheffield United or Coventry or whatever, and that worked an absolute treat. And if you took your pace alongside everything that Shearer had, the combination, because the one thing Alan didn't have was pace, and if the fella alongside him's got pace to get onto anything, then you're in heaven.
And considering all that Alan Shearer did have, dear me, if he had had pace on top of that.
Oh, dear me, you can't be that greedy.
Absolutely frightening.
Yeah, you can't be that greedy. He would have been a Ballon d'Or winner if he'd had pace on top of that, wouldn't he?
Yes. But then he was always able to make himself space.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And was very strong, Malcolm, which is physically strong. Physically strong. And everybody used to say, Malcolm, everybody, and I was the same, and Steve would be as a fan around the time. His nickname was Big Al. Stand next to him, he's not big at all. It's like you're not big in terms of height. You were broad, Malcolm, and so was Shearer. Broad and strong, but not tall. I mean, Dan Byrne would have made the two. You look like a couple of pygmies.
I love it. Let's see what other questions we've got. We've got one or two. Could you see Bruno leaving Newcastle, says Mikey Walker. He doesn't expand on his question, lads, but I think, with regards to Bruno, obviously we know that he signed his new contract. We believe there could be some kind of release clause in there. We know he's ambitious as well, but could you see him leaving in the near future, lads?
Yeah. No signing is forever. And Eddie Howe might well say, if a huge offer for Bruno came in, Eddie Howe might say, yeah, but for that kind of money, I could bring in this guy, that guy, and a couple of others, which would outweigh for the first team what the individual Bruno does, and so that's why the transfer market is there. It's to look for constant improvement, and sometimes you have to let go a real good top player, but you're generally strengthening by the money you get.
I mean, that's an interesting thought, what Malcolm's saying there. And of course, as Malcolm has said, no transfer is forever. It rarely is, and players move on. And, one of the simple answers, generalization, rather than the case of Bruno himself, is did people ever think that Harry Kane would leave Tottenham Hotspur? He was one of their own. I mean, Bruno is a Brazilian. They only discovered Newcastle when he was transferred here. Harry Kane was one of their own. But if you're a superstar player and your club doesn't start winning things, and Spurs didn't, and you get to 28, you're thinking, I've got to move on, else I'm not going to win something. I mean, Harry Kane only went to Bayern Munich because he's virtually guaranteed winning the Bundesliga a few times over there and perhaps winning the Champions League. So he left, and that proves anybody can leave. And by the way, the second point that Malcolm made, which is you sometimes let a good player go and you use the money and you Spurs at this moment, and I'm waiting for the bubble to burst, but at this moment don't seem weaker. When you go top of the league, you don't seem weaker than you were before. And nobody thought we would ever say that Tottenham would be perhaps stronger immediately after Harry left, but they have appeared that way. I mean, I must hasten to add, in saying all this, that my belief on Bruno in the near future, not the long term, is that if Newcastle get the success that the owners are demanding, that Howe wants, and we all want, then he won't leave. because if we start winning trophies, he's so in love with this city, having discovered it, and so in love with the fans that if we start winning things, then Bruno will be more than happy to play with 52,000 if 50,000 chant his name regularly. And
Yes.
these days of chanting names, they're not like the old days with Malcolm, where, you know, chanting about Supermac or chanting about Hibby was second nature. That's what they didn't beat drums in those days. They chanted names, and they don't do that so much now, but they do for Bruno. So if we win things, he won't dream of leaving. But if we're not winning things, in Real Madrid or Barcelona, slap some money on the table with all the charisma those clubs have got, does he say, I don't want to go?
Well, John,
It is like
yeah,
it's football.
This was the point that I was going to raise, that Real Madrid, there's a story in a newspaper that says Real Madrid have got their hearts set on Bruno from Newcastle United. His head's turned.
Totally, yes. Yeah.
You know,
all
of a sudden, everything that you said about how Bruno's enjoying it here, of course,
goes out the window.
Turn, and it's the mental impact that has as well. I've seen players so many times, because there's been a story in the newspaper of a really big club interested in the player, that the player's form suddenly plummets.
I mean, we've also got to remember, guys, that Manchester City have proved there's life after superstars. They allowed Aguero to go. They allowed Mahrez to go. They allowed Silva to go. Toure went and then retired. They threw out Joe Hart when he was the England goalkeeper. And they still went on and won every Premier League title that's there, and then ended up with Europe, and it won a barrel load of League Cups as well. I mean, they're an example of, you know, a team exists after superstars, and superstars on first. And by the way, Ferguson, if you go back far enough, did that with Manchester United.
Yes,
Van Nistelrooy was thrown out. Dwight York was thrown out. Beckham was thrown out. And you can go on and on and on.
But in his early days, John, he created superstars. He wasn't.
But he then did, yes. But then if he felt the superstars got over big or whatever, out they went, and he bought brilliantly or brought kids through, because the manager was bigger than the players, and Pep's probably bigger than the Man City players, if you know what I mean. But the club, it is possible. And I hasten to add, I'm not laying ground for Bruno to leave Newcastle. I'm just saying football evolves that way. It does happen. And if the worst come to the worst and Bruno left us, there's no need to go out and buy a black suit. In morning, you can recover from it. Yes. I mean, we haven't got a history of that. When we sold Waddle Beardsley in Gascoigne, we got relegated because we had as much idea as, you know, it was a nonsense. We weren't ambitious enough. If you are ambitious enough and you've got the financial club, you can do something about it. Bottom line, I hope Bruno stays. I hope we'll win everything from the Northumberland Senior Cup to the Champions League, and we're all as happy as little people that live in pigsties.
Good stuff. Okay, we are coming towards the last 15 minutes of the programme. As I say, this is a pre-record, so we are looking ahead to two games. The first being Newcastle United against Arsenal on Saturday, the 4th of November, 5:30 kickoff live on Sky. I often joke about this one being the Malcolm McDonald's derby. Two great clubs playing each other. And this is a huge game for Newcastle United, because this is against one of what you would consider now their rivals. For years under Mike Ashley, we were at the bottom, and we'd be looking at the likes of Bournemouth or Crystal Palace or Everton, you know, and saying that's our rivals. Now it's Arsenal, Man City, Manchester United, Liverpool, Spurs, Brighton. You know, we're looking at the top end of the table. This is a huge game, Malcolm, and obviously because we're pre-recording this so early, we don't know how Newcastle United got on at Wolves. But this is a big game regardless, isn't it, Mal? Because it's against Arsenal. Newcastle as well, the ground, the fans, the team in the last couple of years, certainly under Eddie Howe, have raised their game against the big guns.
They have without any doubt. But this is going to be a huge challenge for Newcastle United. At full strength, they can give anybody a game. But of course, at the moment, there are injury problems. But the football that Arsenal are playing at the moment is absolutely wonderful to watch. It really is. Their movement and the manager, he's. You think, can they get any better? And he's made it happen very, very quickly with Arsenal. But they were good last season. They're even better this season, and they'll probably be even better again the following season. They are a team who are well and truly on the up, and they are seriously looking at challenging Manchester City.
What is immediately ahead, guys, for Newcastle United is two of the toughest matches of the season. Home to Arsenal and away in the Champions League return against Borussia Dortmund.
Yes.
They are phenomenally tough matches. Now, take the Arsenal game. Newcastle at home in the Premier League only get, since Eddie Howe arrived, they've only been beaten by the quality. I think there's only Manchester City, Liverpool, and Arsenal that have, in Liverpool more than once, but they're the only clubs to have won at St James's Park in the Premier League. So that's what we're up against. However, this season, we've got to be careful. This season, we've lost twice at home to quality, and that was Liverpool, albeit a bit flukish or suicidal from our point of view, with 11 men against 10.
Yes.
And we lose 2-1.
Yeah, in the last 10 minutes, dear me.
Yeah. We lost at home to Liverpool. We lost at home to Liverpool, and we lost at home to Borussia Dortmund already this season, which we're not used to in this current regime. So another defeat against Arsenal is unthinkable, really, that we can go into the beginning of November and have three major home defeats in a season. And we've got to fight strongly against that happening, and we've got to go straight on from that game to play the Borussia Dortmund away, having lost to them at home. So they're two mighty hurdles. They're not just like flipping over the privet hedge in the back garden. It's jumping over Beecher's pool twice. So it's going to be a test of us. And of course, we can't look into it in too much detail at this stage of life, pre-recording, because we have absolutely no idea what the situation will be in terms of injuries. We know some of the long-term injuries won't be back, but any new injuries, any extra suspensions, etc. So the waters will be muddied, but maybe, just maybe, they might be muddied a little bit for Arsenal and for Dortmund as well if they suffer any injuries. So let's wait and see. But regardless of what teams are put out, they're two monumental matches for Newcastle, aren't they? I mean, home to Arsenal and away to Dortmund. Now, after we lost to Dortmund the last time, our next 5 games up to the international break, 4 were away and the one at home was Arsenal. What sort of challenge is that? That is a challenge and a half. 4 away games plus Arsenal at home. Arsenal at home is harder than some of the away games because that's how good Arsenal are. So it's going to be a test of us. We already knew that this season would be that. What we didn't expect was to carry as many players unavailable at one given time as we've had recently. So it is a test. Come January, the load can be lightened because we can go in the market. No club buys a shed load of players in January, and Newcastle won't. but they will cover situations like Tonali, probably on loan. You know, we've talked about getting the ex-Wolves guy that's out in Saudi, Neves, who is out there and is ironically with a club owned by the same people as we own. So surely, if we can't do a in our view, if we can't do a loan deal with them, we can't do a loan deal with anybody. I mean, can I ask you the question? If we have two chances of loan deal, and one is with a Saudi club for the ex-Wolves guy, who is owned by our owners, and the other is with Manchester City for Calvin Phillips, and Manchester City look at us as being rivals for the title. Which club do you think would allow us to take a non-loan player? And the answer is not Manchester City.
Yeah.
Okay, predictions for the Arsenal game, lads. Malcolm, were you first?
Well, I think this is going to be a really tight one, and I'm going to go one each.
Okay, 1-1. John?
From a long, long distance and trying to second guess so much it's untrue, I think it'll be very, very tough for us to win. And the reason I say that is because we won't have our full side out. If I could guarantee the full side out, I would take us to sneak it by a goal. As it is, I'll settle for a home draw. I'll not often settle for a home draw because at home I want us to win. But I would take a draw at home to Arsenal if we could put our full team out, and that's Botman and Barnes on the bench or in the team, and that's Isaac and Wilson and the midfield and Longstaff being physically fit and Joe Linton got his
illness free.
And Joe Linton got his bounce and power back. Then I could see us winning. As it is, looking at long distance, I'll settle for a home draw, and you'll not hear me say that too often this season.
No.
Okay, Newcastle United then take on Dortmund, Borussia Dortmund, Tuesday the 7th of November. 6:45 kickoff live on TNT, Champions League Week 4. This one, Malcolm, Newcastle, I think, learned valuable lessons in that Dortmund game. I think that they were a tad unlucky. They hit the bar a couple of times. I think a draw would have been a fair result. I don't think they played well in the first half. Second half, I thought they deserved something out of it. But going to Dortmund, the yellow wall and all, it's a tough ask. This is a real test of our Champions League credentials, isn't it?
It certainly is, yes. And it's a challenge to each individual player's character and ambition as to how he gets into the game and what he shows. I really do feel that that the challenge of the Champions League, I think, is opening a lot of eyes on Tyne's side as to just how tough it really is. The match midweek against Dortmund, that I really felt that Newcastle were almost embarrassed by the German football that was played in the first half. But what really did encourage me was how Newcastle got right back into the game, and it was only the woodwork that prevented them from getting at least a draw, if not winning it. They put the Germans under pressure as the game went on, but the woodwork stopped them. I have faith in this side that they can take a bit of a footballing lesson in the first half, but half-time changes it around for Newcastle, and they come out really fighting. And I was pleased with the second half performance, just not pleased that the ball didn't find the net.
I mean, the interesting thing about this return game is that if there would have been a whole new complexion on the thing had we got a point out of Dortmund, because it would have prevented them. They would have lost 2 points. If we got a point, they would have lost 2 points. The way things stand, Paris Saint-Germain are top, Dortmund are second, although they've got same points as us, but an inferior goal difference, and that is because placings, if you're on level points, go on the head-to-head results, and Dortmund have beaten us, so they go. So in other words, if it goes right to the end of the season, and Dortmund and I and us are on the same points, Dortmund would qualify ahead of us if they have, because they've beaten us here. If we then draw out there, we've got to beat them out there to even up the head-to-head situation. So they've got a huge advantage having won here to start with, because this is almost a must-win situation for us, as it was for them in the last game, because of the head-to-head situation, whereby they finish above us. You look at the table now, we are in the Europa League place, but we've got a better record than Dortmund have, because the goals for and against is 4-1. And Dortmund is, I think, on the negative side, it's 1-2. But they're ahead of us on the head-to-head. And, of course, this counts in the head-to-head as well. So if we draw out there, they're still ahead of us on the head-to-head, because they've beaten us and drawn with us, and we've lost to them and drawn with them.
Yeah.
So it is a massive... That result, we still don't fully realise yet, because we say we're only halfway through, there's only 3 to 6 games on. We don't realise how costly that result could be. And forget performance, result. That result can be hugely costly, with 2 away games to come and 1 at home. We've got to get something out of Dortmund, to be truthful. And that will be massively difficult.
Okay, time for your predictions on the next Champions League game. So, Malcolm, we'll go with you first.
I wish I knew what kind of a side we were able to put out.
Tough when you don't know, isn't it? Tough when you don't know,
Malcolm. It is very tough. And I, in all honesty, having now watched AC Milan, PSG, followed by Dortmund on Wednesday, I think Dortmund are the best side of the 3. I was so impressed with them, and the whole way in which they went about the game, their positioning, their movement, their pace, the accuracy of their passing, the movement was wonderful to watch. And I think they are the best side that I've seen in our little league. So how are Newcastle going to do over there? As long as we don't keep hitting the woodwork, I'll take us for a draw. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the one thing I don't think the Germans are is prolific goal scorers. I think that they struggle to score a goal. They don't make that many chances for all the wonderful football that they played. Yep. And so, because of that, I'm going to take Newcastle to get a draw out there.
It's interesting you say that, Malcolm, because that's the result I'm going for, and I'm going for it with my heart as much as my head, because I do fear this game. I've got to be truthful. As an out-and-out Geordie who's so biased, I felt we would beat them here prior to the game. I'm talking.
Yes.
I felt we would beat them here, and we didn't. And I think we're really up against it there. We could easily lose there, but we're stubborn. And we went to AC Milan. We didn't play well, but we made certain they didn't.
We were dogged.
We made certain they didn't play well,
yes.
and we got our point. And you know what? I'd settle for that again in Dortmund.
I
would settle for Note in Dortmund. Don't worry about that. I would see that as a very, very good result for us. So I'm going for that as well. I have got a fear of course, in nearer the time, I mightn't sleep too well on the night before. But I have got a fear there. But I'm looking for a draw. And you know what? It's Paris Saint-Germain are the favourites in the group, and they were when the group was first drawn. But I think we've got a better chance in Paris than we have in Dortmund.
Yes, I do. Yeah, very much so, John.
Okay, well, I'm going to go 1-1 for Newcastle against Arsenal, and I'm going to go 1-1 across in Dortmund.
And by the way, that's Newcastle not winning 2 games, but I would be absolutely thrilled to bits for those 2 results, considering who we're playing and our current crisis with team selection. I would settle for those 2 draws right now.
Thanks, everybody, for sending in the questions. Thanks to John, and thanks to Malcolm for taking part in the show. Until the next time, that's all from NUFC Matters. Take care, lads.
God bless you, fellas. Take care, guys.